What's the deal, y'all? It's your boy Shane G. We are here with another episode of Politics as Usual, right here on the Ethos Media Network. And I'm spitballing this one today, y'all, because it's just something that's been on my mind. And it's one of those things where I see all of the sides of it. I see the different perspectives. I know why people feel the way they do about this particular issue. No matter what side you fall on, I definitely understand why you may feel that way. But ultimately, my goal here today is to convince everybody, which is not going to work, but my goal here is to convince everybody that free speech and freedom of speech are both very, very important things that under no circumstances outside of libel, slander, doxing, and direct threats of violence, outside of those four things, um, you should not block anyone's speech. Um, and here's let me go ahead and just break that down. So the issue is let me just break it down by side. I'm gonna do it by side, right? So people on the left, people on the left wing, people who consider themselves to be progressives, liberals, things like that, right? Democrats by nature. Um, a lot of them lately have been the biggest advocates for censorship, specifically when it comes to internet censorship, cancel culture, if you will. That's definitely, and this is me speaking as somebody who I'm sure you could imagine, or if you've been watching the channel for a little while now, you would know I definitely am probably more left wing than right wing, right? Um, but when it comes to the issue of censorship, free speech, things like that, I definitely see it today. I see it more from the left than the right. Now, let me explain where that comes from to Republicans, right wingers, conservatives who may be watching my channel. Where that comes from is the left's goal of basically it's their altruistic mission of being, they want to save everybody and they want to save everybody's feelings. They want everybody to be inclusive. They want everybody, they don't like bigotry, things like that, right? So that's where that comes from. So it's basically it comes from them wanting to save people's feelings. Essentially, that's where that comes from. That's one piece of it. The other piece of it is that when certain people of influence say certain things, that definitely can lead to them influencing other people to take it further than maybe what the person who was speaking initially even intended for that to be, right? So, for example, I'll give you an example of that. Bill O'Reilly. There was an abortion doctor who he used to consistently call Tiller the baby killer. Um, that man was murdered by somebody. That dude who murdered that guy happened to watch Bill O'Reilly. Now, a lot of people were basically saying, yo, Bill O'Reilly should be canceled. They weren't using that terminology at the time, but that's essentially what they were saying. Bill O'Reilly should be canceled because he his speech basically led to this man's death. Essentially, that was the argument that they were making, right? I'll give you another example. Um, when people bash the LGBT community or whatever, a lot of times that'll embolden people who are bigoted towards that community for whatever reason to act violently towards that community, right? So this is the concern of left wing people who are pro censorship. Now, a lot of them wouldn't admit that they're pro censorship, and they try to find ways around it to say that they're not pro censorship. They're like, no, I believe in freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is when the government says you can and cannot say anything. We're talking about private corporations like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc. Well, here's the issue with that argument. The issue with that argument is that all of these large companies get subsidies from the government. They're all very closely linked with the government. Um, Mark Zuckerberg and different government agencies, with the whole misinformation thing, so that's Facebook essentially deciding what information you're allowed to see or not. You know what I mean? So they can control the narrative in that sense, and they're doing it at the behest of the government. So if they're doing it at the behest of the government, then how is that different than the government shutting down people's speech? Same with that I just Mark Zuckerberg, that's Facebook, but same with Jack on Twitter, it's the exact same thing. Same with YouTube. A lot of channels in recent years have been getting snatched, for quote unquote misinformation. So, you know, when there's one narrative that everybody's trying to push, and then a company, and when I say everyone, I mean the government is trying to put out a specific narrative, and then the companies are also on board with that narrative. And if you are going against that narrative, if that company then on behalf of the government decides to shut your availability to communicate down, how is that not a violation of free speech or freedom of speech? You see what I'm saying? So that's why I feel like that's a bad argument. Now, if all of these companies were completely independent of any government interference whatsoever, then maybe that would be a better argument. But, you know, all of the evidence is to the contrary. All of the evidence suggests that these companies are working directly with the government in order to avoid, maybe certain regulations that they don't want to have to face. So they're like, fuck it, we'll self regulate. You know what I mean? Like, this is what ends up happening. Twitter used to be a bathroom stall where you walk in, you just write what you want, and that's what it was. You can't sue the bar because of something that somebody wrote on the bathroom in the bar. You get what I'm saying? That's what the function of Twitter was. That's what the function of Facebook and YouTube and platforms like that were. But that changed at some point, you know what I mean? So, but to get back to what we were saying, I would argue that that's the concern of left wingers speaking to right wingers. And the other thing is they don't necessarily like the idea of free speech when it comes from the right, because a lot of left wingers believe that right wingers only want freedom of speech so that they can offend people, so that they can say racist stuff, so they can say sexist, misogynistic stuff and not have any consequences. That's essentially another reason why the left the left the vocal online left I'm specifically talking about. Let me be very clear about this. I'm not talking about the left at large. I'm talking about the online vocal left. That particular sect of the left, they don't necessarily like the freedom of speech because, again, they think that right wingers are just going to use it to be hateful. Essentially, that's what it comes down to. They're like, you just want freedom of speech so that you can say wild shit about groups of people without having to face any consequences. Now, what I will agree with is that when I do see a lot of right wing people make these controversial statements about, whatever genders, or, you know what I'm saying? If they're saying something negative about the LGBTQ community, or saying something negative about minority communities, or whatever, um, a lot of times whenever they get backlash, their defense is, well, I have my freedom of speech. And it's like, yes, you do. And we also have our freedom of speech to argue against whatever it is that you said. We're allowed to call you a stupid motherfucker if you say some stupid, ignorant shit. You know what I'm saying? So that's something that I'd want to discuss with the right wingers who watch my videos. Just because people attack your speech with their own speech doesn't mean that your free speech is being violated. Free speech doesn't mean you get to say whatever you want with no rebuttal. That's not what that means. And I do feel like a lot of right wingers feel that way. They feel like they should be able to say whatever they want with absolutely no pushback. And that's ridiculous. Now, from a legal sense, you are allowed to say whatever you want and nothing physical happened to you as a result of that. That's true from a legal sense. So I agree with right wingers who feel that they should be able to say whatever they want to say without any physical repercussions. I agree with that because I want to be able to say whatever I want without any physical repercussions as well. You know what I'm saying? We're putting out videos, um, with the hopes of, spreading this message to a lot of different people, our various messages, throughout the different shows. So the whole thing is we're going to be out there. You know what I mean? So I don't want somebody to run up on me and punch me in the face because they disagree with something I said in a video. So I'm with you on that. You know what I'm saying? Again, aside from a direct threat of violence, I'm with you. You know what I'm saying? A direct threat of violence, that's self-defense at my point. If I steal on you first, you know what I'm saying? If you tell me you're going to do something violent to me, if I react to that, that's not me just reacting to words. That's me reacting to the the threat that you said you pose. Now, if you don't act on that threat, that's on you. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, um, now right wingers, there used to be more of a louder contingent of you. I don't know if you're just not really online like that, or if there's a lot more that was more so of an older generation and maybe a younger generation conservative just isn't as religious or whatever it is, but a lot of right wing censorship came from the religious right, I would say, the moral right, I guess you could call them, where it's like, no sex on TV, rock and roll is bad, hip hop is bad, it's bad for the culture. You know, going all the way back, Dungeons and Dragons is bad. You know what I'm saying? Like anything that's not for God basically is bad for society at large. And that's where the whole separation of church and state was always a left wing argument. Like, yo, churches shouldn't be getting tax money. You know what I'm saying? Because there's supposed to be a separation. You can't force your religious ideology on people, in schools, for example, or you know what I'm saying? Like you can't censor stuff on TV you don't like just because it offends you. You know what I mean? That was always more so of, you know, historically more of a conservative position is to I don't like that, so let me get rid of it. Um Now the censorship I would say from the right, it's I don't see them calling for it as much. I would say it's still more so in that realm, like things that they find inappropriate or, whatever like that. Um, but I would say the majority of the people who want to see people, shut down and things of that nature, unfortunately, nowadays that does seem to be coming more from the left. And again, I'm saying that as a lefty. Um, but again, I understand it. I understand why. You know what I mean? Again, left wingers, they want to protect people's feelings. They want to protect people. You know what I mean? So, for example, I'll give you another example. Kanye with the wild shit he just recently said about Jewish people. You know what I mean? Now, the fear from the left, the reason why people on the left would want to see Kanye taken off Twitter, which is what happened, and taken off Instagram, which is what happened, the reason why they called for that is because in their mind, again, Kanye's very influential. So if he's making hateful statements about Jewish people, then that could lead impressionable followers of his to perhaps do something harmful to Jewish people. So I get it. But again, he didn't actually threaten violence against Jewish people, unless I'm mistaken, unless I, misread the tweet or whatever. But, it seems like he said he was going to start maybe saying stuff about them, you know what I mean? And like, that's not cool. I don't agree with that, you know what I mean? But the antidote to that is to call out the stupid things that he's saying and speak on it, you know what I mean? You beat bad speech with good speech. That's typically how it works. You convince people with arguments. Whenever you can't convince somebody of an argument, that's usually when you want to shut them down. You know what I'm saying? And again, I understand it from the left perspective in the need of wanting to protect people. Like, yo, we don't have time for that. There's already trans people getting killed out here. There's already black people getting killed out here. There's already Hispanic people getting killed out here. Like, we don't have time to be trying to change one mind at a time. Like, I understand that mindset. But at the end of the day, everybody can be offended at something. So you don't want to play that censorship game because another example, um, there's been a lot of doctors who were censored on, different social media websites and things like that. Um, because they had different takes on how to handle global situations. You know what I'm saying? Um, and a lot of those doctors, they had a plan, and the plan was mischaracterized by a lot of people to demonize them. So that's always number one. You misrepresent what the person actually said. Uh, and then turns out everybody who the mainstream media would accept their, what I'm saying, their advice on the situation, they all eventually started saying the stuff that this first set of doctors were saying way back at the beginning of this whole thing. You get what I'm saying? But those doctors were censored at the beginning when they were saying it. So not that's a so right there. Another example of right wing censorship, just because again, this isn't a one sided issue. I couldn't think of the example earlier, but I did just think of it. Donald Trump. Donald Trump, Mr. Free Speech guy, the guy who everybody's like, oh, he just says whatever's on his mind. And you guys know that he sued Bill Maher for a joke, right? Like Bill Maher made a joke during Donald Trump's birther days, right? When he was basically saying Obama's not from the country, all of this stuff, right? And so then when Obama was putting out all of the proof to show that he was born in Hawaii, which is a United State, you know what I'm saying? It's a state within the USA. So he's clearly an American citizen. Um, Donald Trump basically was like, pressing him for all of the paperwork, his birth certificate, the newspaper article that came out that day, the long form, all of these different things, and Obama was producing all of it. So Bill Maher makes a joke and says, well, prove to us that you're a full human and that one of your parents is an orangutan. Donald Trump comes out with proof that both of his parents are humans and then sues Bill Maher for saying that one of his parents was an orangutan, which is obviously a joke. So it still comes from the right also. There's a lot of that snowflakery on the right too. They like to say it's only on the left. Another example, anybody who's ever worked customer service. Have you ever had, the older generation, a lot of them like to say that the younger generation, which tends to be more lefty and liberal, is they're entitled, right? If you've ever worked in customer service and you've had an older conservative adult call you upset about something, they're some of the most entitled people you'll ever talk to. They're the ones who are always demanding to speak to the CEO and the president as if these people have phone numbers that can just be transferred to. So it's on both sides, guys. Like, and I've experienced it on both sides, is what I'm saying. There's the left wing who will call you a bigot for asking questions about something you don't understand, and they'll be quick to call you out and retweet a question that you asked in earnest and get everybody on left wing Twitter to try to get you out of here. That exists for sure. But there's also a side over here on the right wing where it's the same thing where they get offended by stuff and they want to cancel people, you know what I mean, or they want to sue, you know what I'm saying, or different things like that. So what I'm saying is, guys, on both sides, whether you're a religious conservative who doesn't want to see over sexualization on TV, or you're a lefty who doesn't want to see minorities being attacked verbally, unfortunately, because the people who are in charge of the information that we get have lied to us so many times about very, very important things. Another example that I will specifically speak about is Iraq, obviously, weapons of mass destruction. Back in those days, if you had said there are no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, you would have been the conspiracy theorist until it was proven that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Would it have been a good thing for the people who were saying, hey, maybe this war is not a good idea because what they're telling us isn't true? Would it have been a good idea to get those people kicked off of whatever the social media at the time was, or whatever the medium that everybody gets their information was on at the time? Because that's really what we have to think about here also. It was different back in those days. Everybody, literally everybody gets their information. When the president is tweeting policy, essentially, you know what I'm saying? You can't, like, at that point, that is how basically everybody's getting their information is through social media. So if everybody's getting their information through social media, to just take that away, especially when the government is involved with these social media companies, it's just it's not gonna end the way that people who want it. It's not gonna end the way that they think, and that's pretty much all I got for today. Just think back about very important things that the mainstream media, the government, has lied to us about. And then think about if you weren't allowed to question that online, what that would mean today. So we got to think about these things. You know what I mean? Again, I'm not advocating for hate speech. And I don't think that the majority of people want free speech for that reason. I do think that that's a big fear that the left has, is that, oh, right wingers just want to use free speech as an excuse to say hateful stuff. Which, yes, there's a contingent of the right wing that is like that, for sure. But that's definitely not all of them. So you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. You have to give them the room to say some crazy stuff. And then when they say something crazy, again, correct them. Use your speech to tell them why what they think is a dumb idea. You know what I'm saying? That's how you convert people. You know, blocking people does nothing but just push whatever. That's how stuff like QAnon and January 6th and stuff like that happens, because you push all these ideas, you make it unacceptable to even discuss without fear of, people feeling like they're going to be canceled or whatever like that. And so what ends up happening is you just push all these ideas underground. And so then instead of it being out in the open, this is why I always say, if my neighbors are racist, I want them to fly their Confederate flag right out open in the front yard. That's why I always say that. I want to know who these people are so I know who to avoid, who I'm dealing with. You know what I mean? I don't want to think my neighbors are cool and they invite me over for barbecue one day and then I walk in and I find the Klan hood. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not really what I'm trying to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've definitely been in that situation where somebody that I was cool with invited me over, you know what I'm saying? And I walked in their house and there's a giant Trump flag in there, like the size of the wall. And I'm like, yo, like, who are you? You know what I'm saying? Like, so I like to know who people are up front. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that all Trump voters are racist. What I am saying, though, is if you like Trump that much, it's probably something, you know what I mean? So, um, yeah, man, the left, I understand where it comes from, but y'all gotta chill. Sometimes you gotta let people be hateful. You know that sometimes good things have bad side effects. Free speech is a good thing, and sometimes one of those bad side effects is hateful people get to say hateful stuff. Um, but that doesn't mean that we should go on a censor spree. And the reason why, again, is because the people who we're trusting to do the censoring, they lie to us when it's at their convenience all the time. You know what I mean? That's all I got for y'all today, man. This is Shane G. This is Politics as Usual right here on the Ethos Media Network. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. You know what I mean? Am I grossly exaggerating what the fears are on each side? Um, right wing people. Do you feel like I was fair and my analysis of, some of the free speech issues that are on your side as well, because I feel like I did a deep dive on my side. So, and nobody's perfect. So let me know. You know what I mean? Do you think I oversimplified it? Do you think I described, some of that contention in a correct way? Just let me know, man. I'm out here really just trying to share ideas, spread ideas, and I want to learn too. You know what I mean? I'm not here to typecast anybody or nothing like that. So this is your boy Shane G, Ethos Media Network. Catch y'all next week. Out.